Okay, we're just gonna jump right into this because I'm not a professional in any way, shape, or form. But you guys wanted me to show you how I draw. So, well, a few of you did anyway. So I'm gonna show you. And we're just gonna go with this. No takebacks, no anything. So, I use Paint Tool SI. That's my preferred tool. If you have something else that you prefer, by all means, use what you're comfortable with. I just don't feel like bothering to learn Photoshop or anything like that. Not to mention, Photoshop is prohibitively expensive. So, um, I have three primary tools that I use. I use a pencil tool, which is just kind of like a spread out, faded, low density setting kind of deal. So, if you can get that kind of setting, it makes for a convincing enough sketch. If you don't, obviously, if you don't use a digital tool, that's fine. You can do this all on pen and paper. So, like, you need a pencil to draw with. I have a pen or an opaque tool, something that is very opaque, very smooth, very clean. That's what I use. If you, on paper, this would be like your markers or your fine liners, um, inks, pens. And then I use the airbrush tool. It's semi-transparent. Um, in a physical medium or a traditional medium, you don't have this kind of option available to you. It's just a lighter pencil stroke or a lighter coloring stroke, whatever. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, though. Basically, all you need to draw is a pencil. So that's what we're going to use today. So when it comes to getting started, the first thing I do is I start thinking about what I want to draw. And I kind of already know what I wanted to draw here. So, but I think about what I wanted to draw and then I warm up. So I do warm up sketches. So I draw things that I'm comfortable with, that I like to warm up with. I like to draw faces. I like to draw people, especially anime faces, cute anime girls doing things. So I draw quick little faces just to warm up, to practice, to get a feel for what I want to do today. There is nothing wrong with drawing the same thing over and over and over, because then you get really good at it. Although, you know, some people will tell you don't draw the same thing over and over, because if you practice something wrong 1,000 times, you'll be right at it. I don't worry about it. I just do what I want to do. So big eyes, little highlights here, little pupil, nose. Am I checking to make sure that they're symmetrical or whatever? No, not really. This is just a warm-up sketch. I'm not really concerned about it. So, your eyebrow ridge, your cheekbone, cheek into chin, and then chin into jawline. Is this face even remotely anatomically correct? Absolutely not. This is like one of those Disney faces with the massive eyes, because Disney makes their characters look like children. Look how neutral this face is. Just completely neutral. Alright, so then I like the side part. I live by the side part. I don't care what the Zoomers say. Side part here forever. Nice rounded head. I'm gonna stick with round features, round eyes, round head, and I'm feeling pretty good about this warm up. Getting a little loose, sketching it out. There's my neck. Neck is way too far back, but who cares? I care a little bit, so I'm just gonna erase that real quick. Oh, I guess if you have a traditional medium, you also need an eraser. So neck. And then this just helps me line up my anatomy here. So this is actually your throat muscle there, and if you stick your finger and your thumb against your neck, you can feel it. So this is where your tracheal muscle thingy is. It's much more defined on men than it is on women, unless you're really buff. But it also lines up directly with your collarbone, because your collarbone helps to protect that part of your body. So there's your beginning of your collarbone, and there's the back muscles coming off, and shoulders. And your collarbone goes right into your shoulder. Boom, anatomy lesson. For the record, though, I've never taken an anatomy lesson in my life. I've literally just seen what other people do and observed details in all kinds of different character designs. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should always be looking at other people's art. Don't let anybody tell you that you shouldn't copy, or you shouldn't trace, or you shouldn't do what other people do. Nothing you do in this world is original. So somebody has beaten you to it, unfortunately. The difference becomes in how you execute what you do. So don't think you have to be original to make art. Just do it. Just make things. And understand that there will be comparisons, that people will tell you, oh, your art looks just like this or that or whatever. Just continue making what makes you happy, and don't let anybody tell you that you shouldn't copy or trace or whatever, because nobody has learned anything from not learning from another person. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, every art teacher has learned from their teacher, and their teacher has learned from their teacher. Everybody learns by copying each other. It's when you take something and you make it your own that it becomes yours. So, okay, pep talk done. All right, and warm up done. I'm feeling pretty good. So, also, I'm really sorry if my audio quality is garbage. This is the best microphone I have, so we'll work with what you got. I'm sure my W's and P's and T's are killer. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we'll move into some like general. My next step after warming up will be, okay, I want to draw another character, and I'll decide I'll draw a circle, or kind of like my egg shape that I started with over here, and my action lines. These are guidelines for your face. And then I'll draw what's called an action line or an action curve, or I'll think about where I want my action line to be. So like if I want a character that's kind of slouched, I'm thinking like a character that's kind of slouched, I'm going to draw an action curve, I guess kind of like this. So you can already kind of tell where the body of my character is going to be, what my pose is going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in more guidelines. So I already have my neckline here. This is my neckline. I'm going to draw my shoulders in. I'm going to have the character at what's called a 3/4 turn angle. They're 3/4 turn to the side. It's my preferred drawing pose. It adds a bit of asymmetry. It adds a bit more drama than just head on, because head on is kind of symmetrical, and symmetry, while nice, isn't always the preferred look. So I like the 3/4 turn. So I got my shoulder line and I got my hip line, and I'm going to have the hip line kind of tilt a bit to the side here, like they're kind of like slouching on one side of their body there. And draw my arms in. So let's put this one in his pocket. Okay, and then here. Now another important line to keep in mind when you're drawing is where your elbows fall. Elbows on standard ratio or average ratio people typically fall around the waistline, and the waistline on humans is actually right here-ish. Not down here where you typically wear your pants. Those are your hips. So your waistline falls where, on women, it's where you get the hourglass shape from. That's the waist, is the cinched part on the body. For men, it's the same area, it's just not typically as defined, but it's where your rib cage ends and your kind of like belly area starts. That's your waist. And that's where, if you hold your arms at your side, you'll notice that's about where your elbows fall. So that's how you keep your arms from being too long or too short, is by making sure that your elbows sort of line up with your waist depending on where your character's arms are. So if they're straight down by their side, they're probably going to line up at the waist. Okay, so I got my hips, I got my shoulders, and your hips and your shoulders are typically about the same distance. Of course, you can push your proportions to make your characters look much more interesting. So if you have a character that's got kind of tiny shoulders and big hips, that's definitely more of like a pear-shaped character. or if you give them really broad shoulders and tiny hips, that's a kind of like a strong, heroic, broad-shouldered kind of look that you typically see on like hero characters like Superman or, you know, whatever. So you can always push those proportions to give your characters different shapes, which different shapes are good. Shapes are good. Okay? So but we're just going to keep going with this character. Now my legs. So, like I said, I had him kind of leaning on one leg really hard. So I'm going to put that leg more towards the center where the center of gravity is going to be. He's kind of standing on that one leg, and then the other one's going to kind of fall behind it. Now, feet. Now, as for how you determine like how long your legs should be, typically speaking, they say that your character on average might be 7 heads tall. I don't measure it that way. I just kind of go with the flow and feel what's right. I'm not going to sit there and say, okay, here's my head, and, or, well, I can do this because I have a digital program. I'm not going to sit there and say, okay, here's my head, and then I'm going to copy, and I'm going to, you know, paste this 7 times and move it down and whatever. Okay, that didn't work, but yeah, okay, so I'm not going to do this because that's tedious. So I just kind of go with the flow and I do what feels right. Sometimes if you look at like anime and stuff like that, which is a big influence of mine, you'll find that a lot of characters have incredibly long legs and tiny torsos and still look really good. If you look at any of the classic Sailor Moon characters, they have crazy long legs. So there's nothing wrong with pushing your proportions. But, you know, step back out, measure, see what's right. Typically, your thighs are about as long as your calves. So I take it and kind of eyeball, okay, it's roughly in the middle, so my knees are going to be about here. Feet. Feet are not flat. They are kind of like a trapezoid with a rectangle attached to them. So I kind of do... I'm terrible with feet and hands. I'm just going to warn you right now. So like something like that, where this is the toe, like this is the box where the toes go. This is kind of the pad of the foot and the heel. And then this is the top of the foot, which doesn't actually have a name as far as I know. Although it might. Don't quote me on that. You can also just do a simple triangle. Keep in mind that any object that is behind another object isn't going to fall on the same line as the others. So like if my ground is here, like this is where my bottom foot is, this foot will fall a bit higher because the ground isn't actually flat. So like, there we go. So we put it like that. He's kind of standing on like a wall or something. The foot's going to fall just a bit further behind, so that way the bottom of the foot is here on that foot and here on that foot. Like, and kind of like, again, like this is just something I eyeball it because it looks right. I'm a terrible teacher, so we're just going to go with that. I hope that you can like figure that out. Okay, so I've got my basic shape here. I'm going to erase these if I was on the right layer. So I'm just going to merge these together. There we go. Because I can't be bothered to figure out what layer I drew those on. Okay, so I've got my basic character here. I'm actually going to bring this in a bit because, and this is why I don't typically teach, is because I go purely based on what I think looks good. Okay, yeah, we're going to go with this. So that's step 1, is figuring out your general shape. I haven't added any extra details. I haven't done anything extravagant with the character. I haven't done anything extra because I just want to figure out where stuff sits. So that's the first step. Where does my stuff need to sit? And it's much easier to fix things in... I'm actually going to tilt this hip the other way. It's much easier to fix things in this stage. No, I liked it the other way. It's easier to fix things in the early stages than trying to fix them later. neither of these look right. Actually, no, we're gonna go back. Shit. Okay, that's kind of slouchy. We're gonna stick with that. It's easier to fix things in the earlier stages than it is to fix them later after you've done your line art. So try to take a step back every now and then. Do the best that you can to. I don't do this all the time, and I pay a price for it. Take a step back, look at your drawing, and say, okay, does this look like what I want it to look like at the end? Or does it look close to what I want it to look like? Paper medium is much more forgiving in some ways, but digital media lets you kind of push things where you need them to be, especially if you know how to use Photoshop and you have like the Liquify tool, which I don't think this program does. I've never found it. So if you have the ability to push things, move things, redraw things, it's easier to do in digital. Oops, I raised my foot there. Okay. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make a new layer. And obviously if you're using a pen and paper, if you're using pen and pencil, you're not gonna make a new layer because you can't do that. You'll do this sketch. What I do on pen and paper is I will take an eraser and I will kind of like squish my eraser into the paper, and instead of rubbing, I will kind of roll it on the paper. Like normally you would use an eraser and you would go like this. Instead, I will take my eraser and I will just kind of like, well, it doesn't work on, but I will kind of like do this to each section and try to erase as little as possible while making the lines lighter. Or you just sketch lightly. Hold your pencil further back towards the eraser and let the weight of the pencil do the work for you, and just kind of like move your hand back and forth. Maybe I'll do a pen and paper tutorial or something. I'll figure that one out. So the next step, again, I made a new layer. If you're using pen and paper, just kind of lightly erase your guidelines here, and I'm going to draw in purple now because it's easier to see. Okay, so I like to do the faces first, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do the anatomy. And actually, I'm going to show you this thing that I made. This. Okay, so this is my anatomy guide for you. So the first thing that I did, we did our, so we did our lines, right? We already did that part. Awesome. We're ahead of ourselves. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and shape our body out. So our arms, our legs, our torso. So I want this character to be a male. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw his torso first. Torso consists of a few parts: your chest, your pectorals, your abdomen, and your hips and crotch area. Keep in mind when you're doing these things that a real person has bones. So like if I want this character to present male, I'm going to keep in mind that he has ribs. So got to make sure we leave room for ribs. Your ribs kind of curve, have a curved shape to them. And then your waist. Now see, my waist kind of fell a bit lower. It's okay. I can just push it up a little bit. There are my hips. Men don't have very big hips, and therefore don't need to have a lot of space for those. And then crotchy groin area with kind of like the top of the butt area. Okay, so, and since it's 3/4 turn, we have the side. I'm gonna draw it out because it's there, but of course, like you'll try to, this is where you would put like a shirt seam. short seam kind of runs down this side or something like that. That's from the armpit to the side of the hip where the pelvis is. Okay, and then your dividing line down the middle of your body to make sure that everything's kind of lined up. So the chest, your pectorals are going to fall on this line to make your chest. Your belly button is going to be here-ish, the center of the rib cage, and then of course if you give them really defined, the defined V, just making sure that all of your stuff falls on this line. Your neck will meet on this line, and that of course means that your trachea muscle thingy area is going to fall on this line. And this is how you make sure that your clothes don't end up like, you don't have your shirt collar facing this way and your clothes end up like this, because it kind of looks ridiculous if you do that. So that's how you prevent that, is by making sure that you have your guidelines here. So crap, what color purple was I using? Here's a good patch of purple. Okay. Alright, so I've got my torso. I'm going to switch to a different color and we're going to draw the arms and legs. Armies and leggies. So shoulder ball joint, shoulder joint. This feels like it's really far out. Did I start a new layer? I did, so I can fix this. And this is why I said it's good to adjust now. So that felt like it was really far out. It felt wrong, so I moved it. And this is why I draw so many layers, is because I can move things. Arms. So first is your top part of your arm. That's where your biceps. That's the word I'm looking for. Biceps are. It's kind of like a fat-ended tube. Tubes are important shape. Your elbow, and then your forearm is a slightly smaller fat-ended tube. I think I drew these too big. Yeah, we're gonna erase those. We're gonna try again. See, always making mistakes and always fixing them. Mistakes are good. Opportunity to learn. I want this character to be a bit thinner, so I made those way too big. Those were like extra legs. And if it helps you to get your shapes right, go ahead and just draw them through your other layer. It's not a problem. Okay. And then your elbows. Again, your elbows and your shoulders are ball joints. That allows you to, well, I think it's a ball joint. I don't, maybe your elbow's not. Your elbow's a hinge joint. Your shoulders are ball joints. And this arm doesn't sit right, so I'm actually going to draw against my guidelines here, and I'm going to draw, because I want the arm to be flatter against the body. And since I've already done my torso and my hip, I know where my arm can actually go. So there we go. Your hands typically fall around the upper thigh or the midsection of the thigh, depending on how long you want your hands to be. So I'm just going to draw these little lemon wedge shapes for now. I'll go back and I'll refine those if I feel like it. I hate hands. I haven't met an artist yet who actually liked drawing them. It's probably wrong. I probably have, but I don't pay attention. So, all right. There is my arm, my armies. Okay. Again, your forearm, if you fold your arm against itself and you put your hand on your shoulder, you'll notice that your forearm and your bicep are about the same length. So again, keep your elbow and your forearm about the same length if you're showing the whole arm, if it's not in like foreshortening. So I said I was gonna put this in his pocket. So it's gonna go like right here-ish. Again, another wedge shape. kind of deal. It actually looks more like a hoof. All right, new layer, and I'm gonna do legs. You don't have to put all of this on a new layer. I'm just, for the sake of teaching, that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna do a new color. You might want to just use the same color. Another ball and socket joint is your hips. Your hips are a ball and socket joint. And that's what allows you to freely rotate them as you do. I'm going to draw the first one, the one up front first. Butt is legs, so we're going to extend the hip down into the leg, and we're going to do this. And then, so because of the way the foot is angled, the foot goes like this. So the big toe is here, and all his little toes are here. So that means that this leg is actually kind of facing like 3/4-ish, maybe a little less. So you won't see a whole lot of a defined calf, but we're going to go ahead and do, but you will see the front of the leg, which is kind of like, if you've ever looked at your legs, obviously they're kind of like triangle, knee, and then kind of like curved like this. And if you've ever looked at your leg, I sound ridiculous. I'm so sorry to anybody who is trying to follow along with me here. I sound like a crazy lady. I feel like the calf is actually kind of long, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and shorten it up a bit, bring the foot up here, and kind of do this number. And again, I'm feeling what I think looks right by having basic knowledge of examining other people's bodies, examining my own body, watching anime and cartoons and real life television, and like just getting a feel for what I find aesthetically pleasing. This leg should actually be a bit further back because we're turned away. So like, and that's like your butt cheeks. That's like the bottom of your butt cheeks where you draw those. So I'm gonna hip out, and then knee here. And because I brought this foot up, I have to bring this foot up. Okay, so let's take a step back and let's look at what I have. I'm going to take off my line here, and I'm going to adjust where I think adjustments need to be made.
Charging
It
battery.
actually looks pretty good. Thank you, microphone. I really ought to turn that off if I'm going to make videos. I actually think it looks pretty good. It's not quite as relaxed as I wanted it to be. He just kind of looks like he's standing like straight-legged, leg-locked. But we're just going to roll with it because I actually kind of like it. It doesn't really say a whole lot about your character though, so if you wanted to like really give it some personality. Actually this post kind of looks like he's like with the head on it. It kind of looks a little condescending. I actually kind of like it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go up to the face, and we're going to go ahead and do our head. Now we've already done our neck, so we don't have to worry about that. Now we can move on into the face. Alright, I'm going to put all of these in a file so I can make them more transparent. Yes. Okay, awesome. Alright. Actually, we'll just go ahead and we'll save the face for another video. So I hope that helps you with your anatomy, I guess, or your drawing. Like I said, I'm sorry that I'm not a great teacher, but I'll try, and I'll keep showing you like how to do the things that I do if you want to keep learning. So we'll do the face another day, and I'll show you how to do faces. I've already said that like 6 times. Alright, we're done now.